Hello everyone, this is Diane. I have 3 cherry journals ready to show you. It's going to take a bit to go through these, so let's just get started. They will be in my shop when you see the video. Let's start out with this one with the blue gingham cover. Now this is an antique or a vintage composition book with a really sturdy cover. And I love the blue gingham design with the cherry theme. So I used this red fabric with little white flowers with blue centers on the spine, and I sewed it with blue thread, and I added these really fun beads that feature red, blue, green, and white. And there are even some cherry beads. There's a blue gingham button there and a little red keychain. Well, the fob of a keychain. And this is a felt bead. I made a tie just using a long strip. I have to retie it because it came out very uneven, but I'll make it more even and you'll be able to just slide it on and off. But it's just the same spine fabric and then a blue and white floral. The design on the front is actually an image taken from a vintage seed or plant book. Maybe you could buy the sapling of a cherry tree from this book, but this was taken from an old seed book. And I backed it with several layers of cardstock. I stamped the word abundance, and then I added this pom-pom trim to the front with some lace. This is the original inside of the book cover. I liked the patina of it, so I just added this little cherry note paper for your book plate. There is a lotto card here that I did a collage on. This is a stamp that I have that I embossed with red embossing powder. And we have vintage stamp and green stamps and a vintage label there, a Denison label. There's a guest check in there you can write on. I included quite a bit of vintage ephemera, and this is a very old receipt from a butter, cheese, and eggs seller, and it says 8/2, and it just has a 1. I don't know the rest of the year, but it was in the 1810s, and this was sold out of Newark, New Jersey. Some of this, the corner is gone, but it's a really cool old piece of ephemera. Then we have a Betty Crocker cherry recipe for coconut cherry freeze. It's got the whole recipe. Added some trim here. This is just scrapbook paper. Another vintage item is this vintage preserves or jam label for making your own. So each book has at least one of those. And another loyalty stamp. I stamped this with my rubber stamp. I want to thank Susan and Tammy for sending me a happy mail, excuse me, while I was creating these, but in time to be included. So some of the items in here are from Tammy and Sue, including this Mary Engelbright paper. I included that in some of that in each of the journals. There's different designs of it. This is in a vintage embroidery transfer that I cut out. A vintage canned cherry label. Just a little grid paper. And this is just a random workbook paper, a vintage workbook from a school. This is a teacher's planner book, so there's lots of space there for writing. I folded it up to form a pocket. This is a vintage price tag. And I had to fold, I have a red and green time card, which I actually got at the Dollar Tree. There's a cherry brad, which I received from, I think from Sue. but it's red on one side, green on the other, and I had to fold it up to make it fit. So it's a little pocket, has a label in there. The problem with that is these want to get stuck on there, so my goodness. I pull everything out. There's a cherry note there on cardstock and a digital, so I can just stack them up and then slide them in so they don't get caught on that pocket. There's a scrap of cherry wrapping paper. I had one sheet of it, and I could cut it up into 3 pieces, so each journal got a piece. Just one small sheet. A fabric ruffle and a vintage yo-yo that was taken from an old quilt. More embroidery transfer. Vintage doily. Here we have a vintage Pearl Brothers Bakery receipt from 1942. I liked the red printing on it. And this is a 1970s, 73 lottery ticket and a little dry cleaner ticket. I did punch the pages that I cut because I rounded the pages because the corners of the cover are round. There's just music instruction paper or sheet and another digital. This is a page from a Jeopardy game. And this is actually from the Jeopardy game also. And from a children's craft book. And just a fun floral note paper. I pieced these 2 pieces together to create a pocket and added another vintage label for ground cherry. And there's a Mary Engelbreit card from Tammy. And a little bingo sheet. A vintage milk bottle cap. There's one in each signature in all of the journals. I think one in each journal will be for cream, one is for cherry drink, and one is just for pasteurized milk. This is a black cherry soda. It's the neck label for a bottle. I love this little fabric piece that Sue sent me with the bluebirds and the cherries. And inside this pocket with the gingham trim at the top is a vintage stationery receipt from 1887. And a Telford cherry cake recipe from a vintage recipe book. Another Jeopardy piece, and this is another vintage receipt. School taxes, 1955, Hazleton, Pennsylvania, and it's green, so I put it in here. It's actually 2 papers with the receipt, so you can remove the rusty staple if you want and use those pieces separately. And I included some random cards and things that have the right colors. Here's a fabric flip that we did in a video with this vintage trim at the top. And the other side of the canned cherry label. There's a fabric cluster with the cherry print fabric. And this is a little digital flash card. I stamped the word enjoy. There's some washi tape there and a vintage postage stamp and a little digital circle. This is the flyleaf from a book, and it says the cherry. There's a nice big writing spot there. This is from a vintage magazine with some kind of a cherry pie. And I included another flash card, says green, and another bakery receipt, Goodman's Bakery. It's from the same batch of receipts, so I'm assuming that this is from the 40s too. This is from Binghamton, New York. There's a vintage, digital label stenciled on that paper. Got some little daisy trim there with pink centers. And I used a vintage penny roll for a pocket and just made this tiny little tag to slip inside it. You can make little notes on that or write a quote or something. Here is another canned cherry label. I like that there's this blank space that you can write on. You would want to write on a non-smearing with a non-smearing pen because it's glossy. I had this little tiny square of a cherry print fabric, so I added that there. Another worksheet page, and here is a planner page with in green print. There's a pink play money piece, a recipe for cherry sauce, and a digital. And this is from a children's recipe book and it's a recipe for cherry fill-ups. And on the back we have cherry sauce for pancakes. I made a ruffle there. That's a digital label. This is part of the Mary Engelbright paper that Tammy sent. So is that. Here I have clipped a vintage Valentine envelope from the 60s, and I slipped a little scrap of the scrapbook paper in there. And an antique embossed piece with cherries and leaves. This is a textured paper in green, and I made a pocket with this vintage soda label for Cheer Up, just because it's red and green. Put some toy money in there and a paint chip with a brad. It's backed with a guest check so you can write on it, and another flashcard. This is just from a children's book, just a fun page. This is from a children's game. It was a thick chipboard, so I peeled it to make it thin and just glued it there for a decoration. I was going to make this into a page in each journal, but then I thought it would be too brittle to sew in, and so I just folded it up, and you've got lots of writing space with this. Put it in, or I just clipped it to the page here. There's another cluster. This is cardstock with a paper napkin glued to it, a digital that I backed onto black paper. Cherry cookies recipe, a white, or this is not white, this is pink, unlined index card, and a flashcard with a red traffic sign. This is a digital. I just made it a little upper tuck spot, and it's got a Candyland game piece, a merchandise tag, well, 2 merchandise tags. Well, this is a sale tag. I did use some blue in this journal because it has the blue cover. These are digital pieces, and then there's a dry cleaner ticket there. And here is the cherry drink bottle cap. I made a fabric pocket here with an eyelet ruffle. We have another guest check, a She Cherry Aid label. You can glue something to it to make it sturdier and use it as a journal spot or a pocket, a tuck spot, whatever you want to do with it. And this is a 1954 page from a little pocket calendar appointment book. And the last signature, we have a vintage popsicle bag. It says, sanitary frozen sucker bags for storing ice treats. Mother keeps a supply on hand. You could buy 20 bags for 10 cents. Here is a pink coin envelope, and I stamped the word delight and some cherries. And there's just a tag inside. You can collage on that if you'd like to. And there's more play money. And be very careful putting things in here. I haven't torn any of them. but if you put it in and pull on that, it could tear easily because it's vintage. This is from a children's book, a little poem about a cherry and another cherry label, canned label. This is a vintage shelf liner for a kitchen with cherries on it. And I love this fabric with the flocked. All the blue is flocked. Stamped those things. I made this pocket with some scrapbook paper and a digital, and this is a list sheet, market list with cherries. It's pretty thick. I keep thinking I have more than one there. A flashcard, a piece of a paper placemat in blue. You can cut it up and use it as collage, or just open it up and write on it. And a recipe for fabulous fudge with some, looks like maraschino or candied cherries in it. Cherry opera fudge. Yep, candied cherries. Mary Engelbreit paper. I stuck a green label on it. Oh, this one got 2 of those penny wrappers. There's another recipe book page with a cherry pie. Children's book. And a digital circle. A cluster. Another fabric pocket. And a tag made from a scrap of cherry cardstock that I had. I made 2 tags and I had this square piece left. So this goes in whatever book didn't get one of the tags. And a promissory note from the Game of Life. And another Pearl Bakery. I just stuck a piece of that ribbon up here. This came from either Tammy or Sue. Sue sent the fabric. I'm thinking she sent that. I stamped these corners and the phrase, count the happies, and there's the pasteurized milk label. And I stamped this little cherry and created this tuck spot with a doily. There's a index card, game money, and a coat check. I love this picture of the cherries on that label. And then this says Delight in Little Things, and I just used a paper bingo. It's not backed with anything, it's just the paper, so it is kind of thin, and I put a blue tag in there. And then this recipe card was used to make a tuck spot for cherry butter cakes, but the recipe's on the back side, so you can't make those unless you take that off. A guest check, there's lots of guest checks in here. Another bakery, and a flashcard. And then I have another of the bluebird and cherry pockets on the back, another of the market lists, and a time card with my signature, a little label you can write on. So there's this one. This one is called Abundance. Each of these journals will come with a packet. This one has extra Mary Engelbreit things from Tammy. She sent stickers and little punch outs. So I used most of those in the fabric journal, so the extra pieces are going with the fabric journal. It's more of a Mary Engelbreit cherry theme. And then these 2 packs, well, they all contain paper scraps and a red doily and these little sticky note pieces with cherries on them. I divided up the digital circles and journal cards. Dry cleaner ticket and a couple tabs that I punched and some stamps, green stamps, and a price sticker. Price ticket. It's not a sticker, but it's vintage. So all of the kits get that sort of thing. Let's look at the fabric journal. This is the one that has the Mary Engelbreit designs in it. I made a tie with this pink and red cherry fabric and the same fabric. All of the ties have this fabric with the blue flower center on the back. I'll just slide it off. I did add a yo-yo to this, but I didn't feel like I needed to add anything else. I kept saying I was going to add more, but I decided it didn't need anything. There's the spine that has several pieces of vintage ribbon with embroidery, and this little vintage linen piece. And some of them snuck inside. The bead dangles, they all have the cherry beads and buttons. So I don't need to talk so much with this one because you've seen all the things. The same stationer's receipt. This one is orange cherry pie and a Quizmo card instead of a bingo card. This is part of the Mary Engelbreit set, and I made it a tuck spot, and it has a green printed tag. So if you see, oh, we skipped a few. This is typing paper, pink typing paper, and a workbook, Mary Engelbreit paper. And if you see these kinds of things just stuck here and there, they are more than likely they are the Mary Engelbreit punch out things. There were a lot of teapots on that. So I made a tag. It says time for tea, and another blank index card. Nursery rhyme book. This one had cherry corners from the Mary Engelbreit sticker sheet. Here is a black cherry soda label, a dry cleaner pink tag, the memo page, a digital, and this is a piece that I never used in any of the books. They came out of a seed or it looks like a sapling catalog. Probably the same one that had the picture on the front. So you can use that any way you want to. There's a time card with the cherry brad. It says, put your heart in it. And a digital. I believe this is from KB and Friends. And then this one has a pocket made with a vintage crepe paper wrapper. The crepe paper was in it when I bought it, but I love the red and green of this vintage wrapper. It's not backed with anything. It was kind of thick, so I didn't back it. It does have a little tear right here. Just a slight one. So if you wanted to tape that, put some old tape on it or washi tape, or just let it tear. Oh, this one has a guest check. I had to trim it a little bit to let it fit in there. And a recipe for cherry berries on a cloud. Another popsicle bag. Cookbook page. This is from an old piece of a cherry printed. Well, had other fruits on it too, but it's an old tablecloth, and it does look a little bit stained. Mary Engelbreit pieces. They even put a little Mary Engelbreit flower on the cherry fluff recipe. Lottery ticket from the 70s and a Monopoly Junior money piece. This one is the pocket recipe card, and it's cherry topover cake. All right, so now we know this card goes in the last journal. I have another brad, cherry brad I can put on that. I'll stick it up there so I don't forget. Myers Lumber Company receipt from 1955. I put it in there because it's pink. I have another bakery receipt. Here is milk bottle cap, dairy products. That Savers book. This one does have a few stamps, but still lots of space for writing. And this card you can write on. And there's another cherry pie. A recipe. Well, it's not really a recipe. It came out of a cookbook, but it's a little paragraph about cherries. I have to read this. I didn't read this before, but I saw the name Mark Twain. I'm curious. Mark Twain claimed that we women could, if given enough time and hairpins, build a battleship. Hairpins, also mighty useful as cherry pitters, are growing scarce. So it tells you how to pit cherries, along with some other things. That's interesting. This is a different can label. Another tax receipt from the 1950s, school tax, 1951. And this is the back side of that crepe paper wrapper. We have a recipe for cherry coffee cake. And this came out of a vintage magazine. And the Valentine envelope, and this one has a little merchandise tag in it. George Washington cherry pie recipe. This says, "Let's sing a song of sixpence rhyme, 4 and 20 blackbirds baked in a pie." We can pretend it's a cherry pie. And this one has part of a pink placemat. A recipe for cherry cobbler and brandied cherries and cherry cup and paint chip backed onto a pink guest check. And on the back, I used these 3 little strips that were left over and put them onto the front of a library pocket. It looks really cute. And a ground cherry label. And I have to glue this on. Let me do that real quick. And then we will look at the last journal. All of these journals have, well, 2 of them have a 2-inch spine. But the last one has a 2 1/4-inch spine. This fabric journal has a piece of felt inside. So it's fabric on one side, fabric on this side, and then a felt in between. So it's nice and floppy, and it feels really good and squishy, and I love it. Now let's look at the final one. This one is called Cherish. I didn't put a name on the fabric one, so it's just a patchwork fabric cherry journal. This is a piece of fabric with the cherries printed on it. I love the green gingham, and I just had this random book cover in my stash, in my collection of book covers. So it wasn't specifically themed for cherries, but I love the deep green color. Vintage rickrack here. Got some red and off-white ticking. And this vintage fabric here, and a vintage yo-yo. And the beads and buttons. And this one is the one that got the ladybug bead dangle. Got some recipes here. This is from a vintage magazine with a cherry stencil design on it. I had this like a old craft book page, and I put a digital card on it, and it made a little pocket on this side, so I just tucked an old Candyland game card and a sale card in there. Price ticket. That's not vintage. Here's the Valentine envelope for this journal, and it has a Candyland card game. Is that the same one I just had here? Yeah, let's put a different one in here. Let's put a green one in there. We have the shelf liner, embroidery transfer, typing paper. This is another old, it's a racing betting ticket, I think. Second race, like a horse race. And it's got a dry cleaning ticket, a sale ticket, and this is a piece of ephemera. It's not vintage, with cherries on it. This is vintage, though, out of that cherry tree book, or fruit tree book. This is another pieced together background for the back of that cherry tree book. Just some things for journaling or gluing, whatever you want to play with. Here we have a recipe from a vintage magazine. Nice space for journaling. The stationers, every journal got one of those. I think that's all I had. And an antique postcard with cherries on it. I can't read, but it's from the early 1900s. This is a little tuck spot here with a lottery ticket. And I made this pocket for this journal. This should have slits in it, but I didn't want to try to find things to put in all the slits. So I backed it with green cardstock. And there is a time card with a cherry brad. And the letter M for Monday for journaling, and the rest of the days of the week are in the rest of the book. Flashcard and cherry butter cakes. This is from a children's nursery rhyme book. A little girl is enjoying a plate full of cherries, but I glued her to some cardstock and made her a tuck spot. So there's Cherry Pie Supreme here, Project Life card, and just a game card. It had to do with fractions. So I don't know how you played it or anything. It was an educational thing, but you can do what you want with it. Oh, I have 3 recipe cards all. Oh no, we're in the second signature now. Cherry Banana Pie. Project Life card. This is the little cloth booklet that I made, the little folder I made. I've had it in my stash for probably a couple of years at least. So, since it has cherries embroidered on the front, I used these little cherry sticky notes and made journaling cards and put them in both of the pockets. Then I just sewed it in. I like this fabric flip with the little gingham bow on it, or cluster, I mean. This is another pocket made with the napkin piece and a digital cherry crepes and a large playing card. A recipe for cherry ice cream cake, label, and a digital. This is the washi tape. The cherry drink. Here is Tuesday and Wednesday. There's a flashcard in there. And then the third signature. I had 2 of those crepe paper wrappers, so this signature has the front and the back of that. The Savor book that you can open up and write on. The pink pocket with a green printed tag and some play money. I put the back of this right on the back of this because I wanted it to look like it was wrapped around. And there's 1946 school tax paper and a sold tag. I think that's just glued on, it's not a pocket. Cherry label. This is just a paper to write on. A fabric flip made with a vintage piece of linen. Flip-flop pancakes. I glued Mary Engelbreit paper to the back of that. Just a little piece of fabric there. I'll probably, I'm going to include some fabric pieces in the little packets that come with these journals. This is another Myers Lumber label or receipt from 1956. And we have Thursday and Friday. It only had the weekdays on that little card. And this was one end of this. So do what you want with that. Kind of goes with the Mary Engelbreit cherry stuff. And these corners. Project Life card. There's a little writing space there. This bingo card paper, remember that's a paper, so it's thin. Don't pull on it too hard when you're taking the tag in and out. But that has a Candyland card game on it, game card. And this library pocket has a flashcard, my signatures on there, and this play money. I forgot to find a place for this. Just tuck it in here. So that's it. 3 cherry journals. This one is Cherish. This one is just the fabric journal. And this one is Abundance. You can follow the link below to go to my shop and see if these are still available if you're interested. Thank you very much for your attention to my videos as we worked on these journals and for watching this video. I really appreciate it. I will see you in the next video, and I hope you're having a creative day. Bye.